Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's David Palmer, Leo King, and this is my end of the year address in the astrology for the year of 2020 and coming into 2021. This is a video that I have done since 2013 where I wrap up the year, talk about what we've gone through, and also go into where we're going next. This is also going to be like my weekly horoscope for this week because this is such a unique transitional moment. This is also where I'm going to talk about, of course, like I said, the wrap of the astrology, where things are going in 2021, and especially just right away. But I also love to be able to do this as an address to everybody, whether you're on High Vibe or whether you're on my YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, about the plans, how content is going to move forward, and some of the projects that I have going and so forth. Before I go into all that, I just want to have gratitude for everybody out there that have stuck with me. I know that there's a lot of people out there who, have questions about me and my own life and how I do astrology. And that's always happened. It's always something that constantly happens with me. So I think I've gotten better at dealing with it. Of course, it's not always easy. But when it comes to the astrology, and I appreciate you all that do watch me and watch these videos and support, because I'm not your typical astrologer. I make bold predictions. I speak what I find to be truth in the astrology. I'm so much about hermeticism that I look at both sides. I'm willing to look through everything. I'm willing to call everything out. And so I appreciate all of you for being there and support. And I know that there's been a lot of people that have been in support for me for a decade now. And I appreciate all of you, even if you just found me last week. Now, 2020 has been quite the year that has left us all with no conclusion. But I would like to say differently. I think it's been pretty clear with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn that met, which we'll never see in our lives again in Capricorn, all at the same time. To have Saturn and Pluto meet in Capricorn, that hadn't happened since 15, 17, and 18. See Jupiter, Pluto meet, we hadn't seen that since the 1770s, right? In Capricorn. We saw it 3 times this year. And then, of course, Jupiter, Saturn, which we saw both in Capricorn and then both transfer into Aquarius and end this 200-year cycle of primarily being conjuncted in earth signs and moving into air. But, it seems like there's a lot of questions and a lot of things. And yes, there are still questions about life. But I would say that a conclusive astrological look at things was truly about realizing that the idea of destiny is real. That all the events that we have seen come into 2020 was not because of the way we handle or we conduct our lives, but a story and, more importantly, a reality and an experience, a spiritual one, that was meant to awaken us in so many different ways. I mean, it blows my mind when I look at 2019 into 2020 and you see Jupiter in its home sign, you see Mars in its home sign of Aries. I mean, we saw so many events of all the planets, really Neptune in its home sign, Saturn in its home sign. Like, it was just dignified central. But everything was all pointing towards 2020. And the conclusion has been that destiny exists, or fate. Now, that's sometimes a hard pill for people to swallow, especially on the free will side of things. I'm not somebody to say that free will doesn't exist, but free will in its complete form and the understanding of it just makes no logical sense. I always like to use the examples like you have no control over, when you want to go to the bathroom. You can hold it as long as you want, but it can go bad. At the same token, you have no control over the weather. You have no control over when you want the sun to come up in the morning. I mean, you could blackout curtain it, but there's still a reality that the sun is out. And there's a lot of things in astrology that especially Hermeticism, or whether you want to even just look at it from just the understanding of astrology in general, which is so much more than what we have been seeing in astro meme culture, which I have nothing against. I actually find some of it extremely hilarious and extremely fun. But, let's not lighten the load of astrology by just giving it just kind of the more fluffy aspects. And I like to keep it deep. And I like to keep the substance of astrology within it. And I feel that 2020 has been a year of a very rare Venus retrograde, the Venus retrograde in Gemini with the North Node, which of course is rare because the last Venus retrograde in Gemini and the one prior to that from 2004's retrograde and 2012's were eclipses with the sun. And we ended that cycle by completing that Venus retrograde in 2020 that was not a Venus eclipse. We saw Comet Neowise come in with a solar eclipse in Cancer, which that brings up a lot. Comets are very rare, especially when they do pop up. And they pop up out of nowhere in many cases, and they are a signal from the universe. And it came at the most opposite position of where we saw Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. So even though things have looked very dark, things have looked like things are going to go in the most sour of places in life. Comet Neowise that came in with that solar eclipse and was in through July was a sign of hope. To remember that the emotional body, that family, that your foundation, and it also came through Leo, your heart, your courage, and your will, and your ability to stand up for yourself are the cornerstones of what astrology really is about. The sun and the moon are Leo and Cancer. And opposite of that is Capricorn and Aquarius, which is Saturn's home, and Uranus, if you count that too, for Aquarius, which are very different energies. The sun and the moon deal with the king and the queen, the understanding of life itself. And Capricorn and Aquarius and Saturn deal with more of the reality. And remember, they're luminaries in Leo and Cancer. And they're more physical energies that we see, of course, with especially Capricorn. And I think that we have been living in a world where we are seeing the split of reality and also from the other side, whether you want to call that dimensions or you want to call that the spirit world or spirituality. It's been quite a time to be alive and to experience all this, which I think has been exciting, but at the same time, it's come with a lot of questions on, the conclusions outside of what I would say is this has all been set and preset, but the conclusions that we are in a world now that truth is a big question. Beliefs are a big question. And I think it's the truth that we have to really get to the bottom of. And it's going to take some time. We have the North Node in Gemini through all of 2021. We have Mars that has been in a retrograde in Aries that we have not seen fully in Aries and stepped through the whole entire course of its retrograde motion to direct motion and shadow period in Aries since 1941. And when you mix that with all the other big things that have happened, like Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter and Pluto, these big conjunctions all happening at the same time. A rare Venus retrograde, a rare Mars retrograde. I don't think you can get any more cleared out. We enter into 2021, with the real edge, the real weirdness, as Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius will start to make their squares to Uranus and Taurus. And very ironic that Uranus rules Aquarius, and there it is in its fall position to Taurus. So even though Saturn is in Aquarius, it's not as strong because the dispositor of Aquarius is Uranus, and it's in its worst sign of Taurus. Jupiter happens to be the son of Saturn, right? And both of them are in their grandfather or father's home as they square their granddad, Uranus, in Taurus. It's a fixed energy we are coming into. It was a very cardinal energy. A lot of the way that you look at 2020 was a lot of cardinal, right? It's like, okay, we got to fix this. We got to do it now. We got to have control of it. Like, just get it. But then you notice control is something that is an illusion. You can plan, you can calculate, but really it's all about, in Capricorn, a mystical sea goat. With Neptune that had been sextile with so much of the Capricorn energies, I think it's important to remember that, when it comes to this idea of control and so forth, it must come from a higher source. And I think that the positive about 2020 is a lot of people have become awake. I think that the harder part is that I think a lot of us in the spiritual community, and it's split. We're seeing it in politics. We're seeing it everywhere. We feel a split. But I can tell you one thing, that when it comes to astrology, it is not something that is to be used to, go against other people and shame them and tell them that they are doing the wrong thing. And with Uranus in semi-square with Neptune, and now we're seeing Jupiter and Saturn going to come into a semi-square with Neptune, the media has been our number one enemy. And I'm not trying to say this because you hear, which everybody likes to, of course, in I think a very weird fashion, called the Orange Man from the spiritual community, which is, I think, pretty denigrating compared to what we're trying to hold as being spiritual beings. I talked a lot about this in 2016 about, judging a man before he even became the president about being president when he wasn't even the president yet. And so a lot of people get on me by calling out a lot of this stuff, which I think is warranted for anybody. But at the same token, a lot of the spiritual ideals of freedom and to be able to express your truth, I think a lot of us in the spiritual community who have been embodying this energy of light worker, of holding the light, of being in a high vibration, are looking around and going, what happened? What happened to our brothers and sisters that are shaming? What happened to our brothers and sisters that are telling us that we're crazy? Because we're not going to follow everything that the television tells us? The one thing that, I know for me, and I don't know for others out there, I've been in the television world since 2005 and been a TV personality and done many reality shows and been a talk show astrologer for 8 years plus. That I've done so many shows and I've seen the edits, and I had a thing to bring astrology to the mainstream and get away with this whole being laughed at thing. This is the same media that laughs at you as a spiritual person. This is the same media that laughs at the spiritual community. This is the same media that I can show you so many different news, whether you want to call that broadcasts, that have always gone to these spiritual conferences or United Astrology Conference of 2012 and made fun of it. I remember when I was there at United Astrology Conference of 2012 at UAC, that was my first one, and there I am, and I made the news. And I remember when the news anchor asked me if I would speak, it was because she looked at me and she goes, "You're the only person here who looks young, hip, and has a different viewpoint probably." And I said, "No, we all actually have a very beautiful viewpoint." And you can watch that video. It's on my YouTube. And that was when I was working with Michael Erlewine, who deserves so much respect in the astrological community. Not only, of course, is he a Regulus honorable winner in astrology, but he also is the Lifetime Achievement Award in astrology. And I'm blessed to have known him and being able to learn from him and be there in 2012. And, that whole entire video made fun of the whole conference, yet he held his own, his truth, especially about his heliocentric astrology. A lot of others did too, but we were still all laughed at. And I think with Chiron, which is in Aries, we need to look at who is being laughed at the most. Because whoever's being laughed at the most is a reflection on the inner pain from within ourselves. And I am not one to say that I don't laugh at certain individuals or people. I loved the political cartoons of 2020 being memes. You would have thought it would have been overwhelming for Trump, but it was against Biden. A lot of people in the spiritual community are definitely, and maybe even the astrological community at large, have questions about being injected with something that mutates. And the fact that we're being shamed for that drives concern for me. It's okay to question. It's okay to question the narratives. It's okay to do your own investigations for yourself. That's what freedom is. That's what Aquarius represents as well. Aquarius represents putting all the pieces together before you actually know, because you really don't know. I don't think anybody knows the truth, but it's important to continue to figure it out. So I'm going to go into some of the astrology, but I want to say this. As long as I've been doing YouTube, and as long as I've been doing, especially Facebook Lives when they first started, I've always had a weekly video out, and I'm going to continue that. But starting today and moving forward, YouTube, Facebook, and so forth, or any of my public social media platforms, are going to get the Uncut Astrology Report again. But Deep Astrology is going to stay only on High Vibe. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I can't express my true self on Deep Astrology. And quite frankly, a lot of people on YouTube want faster forms of content from me. But people on High Vibe like to spend more time. They like when I go on for 2 hours for the week. They like when I go deep into the charts, when I branch off and I'm able to go into a bunch of history subjects and so forth. And with the state of social media today, it's not only just safer, but it's energetically just better. There's a lot of attacks, whether it's from the religious to scientists calling astrology a pseudoscience. You have to remember that most astrologers have had to deal with it, but I guess in today's world, including ones that are even older than me, maybe they haven't. They didn't put themselves out there enough. That's why I put on my 2021 fractured reality, or it is fractured reality, but I call it shattered reality, is what 2021 is. The reality is to be shattered. And there's a way out. You don't have to go through this negative connotation of that, but being laughed at all the time is something I'm used to. And the embodiment of Chiron to me is, I think, the most important part of astrology. It is the key. It is the key to unlocking the human soul. Because if you think about Chiron, as it sits in between Saturn and Uranus, which is this weird space of the physical and the non-physical, the transcendental boundaries, right? That we go into this weird place that Chiron sits in between. That we're in a physical reality, but we also can tap into a side that we don't see with our own eyes, but we can feel, we can sense, we can try and put things together. The 3 outer planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto have been very important to astrology. And especially if you look at 2020, as they have been truly the ones that have been, I would say, the most significant aspect of it, especially Pluto, which is not even considered a planet. So I find a lot of irony in what I see right now in our world that we're not allowed to question. That there's even parts of history that they're trying to erase, and especially planets. Well, like the weather, for example. There's been more science that has come out this year about the magnetic pole shifts that are happening here on Earth, right? Like the actual magnetic pole shift is literally happening. And 25% of our electromagnetic sphere has been weakened. And we have gone through a solar, in itself, magnetic pole shift. And the storms that we saw this year, the hurricanes, even what we call this CV, is it not maybe connected? And I know that it's something that is still a question. I'm not saying it's truth. But there's a lot more sense in things like that. And especially right now, I think it's important. And especially where I come from, and as an astrologer, is how I deliver things. And as a Leo, and yes, I know Jupiter and Saturn are in Aquarius, this is my opposite, but it's the will to make sure that you set yourself free as a soul, and to make sure that we don't set up countries and the world as a prison. I've been throwing the study out of pathogens and how it dictates authoritarianism in politics. And whenever there's a pathogen that comes into any part of society, that it triggers, especially those that feel that they're vulnerable or those that are just in fear, that they turn actually individually authoritarian, which would be very Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn in Capricorn with Mars in Aries and square. And I've seen more authoritarianism from individuals in the spiritual community than ever. And I feel that that's something to look at from an astrological standpoint. And I don't think it's crazy to look at, especially in where we're at right now in society with weather patterns, this weird thing that is going around, that everything is connected to the sun. Everything is connected to our universe. Or just even looking at that the actual galaxy itself has its own north and south pole that it flips. And we're seeing all these magnetic energies that are shifting and electromagnetic on every planet too, including ours. And that's not what's talked about. And it's being blamed on human beings. You. And when you start to see blame being pushed on a collective, blame pushed on this place, blame pushed on that place, blame pushed over here. Is that what the divine does? Is blame? And I think that the way that I want people to know as I end this 2020 and my message to people with the astrology, which I'm keeping pretty simple this week because Mars exits Aries and comes into Taurus, and it's getting ready to square, and it's going to be a big one. Square Saturn in Aquarius and square Jupiter in Aquarius and conjunct Uranus in Taurus, and then we have Uranus coming direct on January 14th. It's going to be wild. And it's going to be a wild 2021 and more wild than 2020. 2020 actually to me was not wild. It was a lot of hunker down and Capricorn, patience. But that's over. And I think that my big question to people is, are you really ready in yourself when it comes to this Aquarian time to express your uniqueness and to remember that we have a collective, but it's the individuals in the collective that create a collective. And then if you lose your individuality, if you lose your spark within to be innovative, or to at the same time not go through any of the feelings of draconian measures and somehow accept that the astrology has shown us for a long time, whether you want to go into some of the oldest astrology text, that what we've gone through has been about suppression. And more importantly, the suppression of trying to take our freedoms away. And Aquarius is about freedom. And I ask you if you're ready to truly free yourself. And it will be all of us as a collective and all of us in the spiritual community coming together. But this goes back to that pathogens and the authoritarianism that, authoritarians themselves only get elected by individuals that create that because of the authoritarian shaming that they do on others, that they're not following this, that they're not following that they're not doing this. And that always ends up years later in all the psychological studies by scientists. Those are the people that end up in camps are the ones that get shamed the most. That they end up making camps for people like me that question. And I ask you in 2021 to not stop questioning. The universe is telling us as it's pointing towards there. And with Mars, that's going to come through all these personal signs. It's about restoring your personal life. And it's not going to be when some higher order tells you when that will be. It's within yourself. And it was very difficult for the years that I have spent, especially in 2016 with Age of Deception, preparing people for the Age of Deception that we were coming into, that we were actually in an Age of Deception, coming to its peak here in the ages. We talk a lot about the Age of Aquarius, or rising through the darkness, that we were going to rise through a major darkness that was going to come to try and take us away. I also predicted a plague that would come in 2020. It's even kind of cryptic that I even got to the date of literally when China found out that something was weird. And I warned you all about our rights being taken away in 2017. And, putting those predictions out and putting all that stuff out for years, I got a lot of backlash. It came true. And I got real... I don't even know what the term is, but I just got really not mad, not upset, not fearful, not anything, but I just got really almost in just a disbelief to see so many astrologers really take this stand of repressing. And just following also what the media says. In a time where the collective is being used by the media, as Neptune has been in semi-square with Uranus and Taurus. And now Jupiter and Saturn are going to do the same as they square. And I just want to tell you all that the media narrative out there is against the people. And that is not because of what Trump says. That is actually because of what the astrology says. And you can interpret that however you want. Jupiter and Saturn in semi-square to Neptune. Neptune rules the media in Pisces. It's deceptive. And the reason why that I'm going to just bring back the uncut for the weekly on YouTube is because on what I have to really say, I'm not able to say it here on platforms like this anymore. I literally cannot. And this is also a video where I offer my hand of truce to those that disagree with me, that I love you, and it's okay to have disagreements. All I ask is that you make sure that you keep the platforms of all communication for all of us as a collective, and for more people in the world to have questions and offer insight about how this world should go forward, that everybody should have a seat at the table for that. And that shaming for questioning the things that take away the rights of people of all races, of all statures of a soul, is something that the founding fathers of America questioned themselves and did something about. And I would hate for us to get to that place again. And I think that it's important, looking at the astrology and looking at 2021, that that's what this is going to be about. We have a choice as a collective on whether or not we fight to keep freedom alive, or we fight while we're in the cage and trying to get out to save our freedom. And I know that this sounds like some sort of media rhetoric, but it's really just the astrology itself and the deception that the media can find ways to tap into what is actually happening astrologically and give you a completely alternate basis of what it is. There's too much research that's not able to come to the forefront, not only in the matters of health right now, but also in the matters of science and what is happening to the Earth. What is happening with our electromagnetic sphere? What is happening with the sun? What is happening with the sun in the galaxy right now? And what is happening with all the other planets? And that people are not looking at that. People are not looking at how that can affect all of us. That there's frequencies that are coming not only just from the earth and from the sun and from the galaxy as well, and the novas that can be created from the galaxy, that of course the energy comes to our own sun, but the frequencies that come from this, the frequencies that come from a collective that is following a narrative that has a hidden Wizard of Oz sitting behind it. And this goes into the accusations that I follow a certain letter in the alphabet. No. And it's funny, I think at one time I looked up some of what that letter says, and I just was like, whoever's doing this is style biting off things from Christianity to spirituality and so forth. And I am somebody who is going to come and call things out. I called out Doreen Virtue last year for coming against the spiritual community after she sold and she pushed all of us with tarot, angel cards, and different cards and spiritual ways of life. And then told us we were all going to hell if we didn't repent for our sins. Didn't ask for refunds either, or give refunds when it came to certification for people that became readers of hers. I ask for you to think twice. Think 4 times. Think 5 times about what is the narrative that's trying to come at you right now through the mainstream television, radio, social media. How can you not see censorship is happening? About sensitive issues, what? They're trying to protect you? Or are they trying to not show you the information and be a South Node Sag and be the all-seeing guru that knows everything for you? That's not spirituality. That's quite opposite of what it is. One thing I learned from an amazing astrologer who I love dearly, Rod Susskind, who's down in South Africa and an African shaman as well. In my interview with them in 2018 at UAC, at UAC, which is a great interview, you should watch it. It's on my YouTube, and it's on the app. But in tribes in Africa, everybody has a place. That when there's an issue, everybody gets to hear the issue. So they can help ways to help any individual in the tribe or people in the tribe deal with it. And it's scary to me that we are in a society right now that is doing quite the opposite. That only people that we have not elected are telling us what we need to put in our bodies, how we need to deal with things, and all the data and all the numbers are showing quite opposite of what's really being done. I think J.P. Spears is wonderful. I think this year, and I've said it before, I used to think his stuff was, light and funny, and I really wasn't too into it. But now I find the guy as a great, great truth speaker, and I will stand behind people from all sides of all energies. And what I've noticed this year in 2020 is how many people over the last decade that have been on YouTube or Instagram before, even Instagram or even after, wherever you want to be, who all put this work so first in their lives, and 2020 came and they ran to the hills. They ran back to their parents' house. And they stopped putting up content. They stopped showing up for you every day. But they came into a role of shaming. They came into a role of repeating what the media says. And I think it's important right now that this is a time where it's pretty clear. A lot of people like to think it's clear on the other side of things, which happens to be this really weird being okay with information not being seen. with not allowed to question certain things, with blocking things completely. While at the same time as well, using fear tactics on people every day. This is the first year in our lives that all we do is have a death counter up about how many deaths are happening. Yet they're not reporting, and who's accountable for all the deaths of the people, especially for children. It's like close to, I think, 100 and under 18 years old, 127, I think JP Spears just put up, and the CDC numbers say that children have died from this thing this year. But 25,000 children have died this year alone in America from other things that, I guess, those things are less dangerous. You can do that when you get into the numbers of humans in all age groups. You know, it becomes kind of one of those things where if you really don't believe in astrology, and you really don't believe that Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn and Capricorn, and even if you want to use Vedic, that Jupiter and Saturn met in Capricorn, or that Pluto entered into Capricorn as well in Vedic, if you don't want to see that this is government control from hidden elements that are also trying to overtake the government, and take away all your freedom, because that's what Kronos did. Then, it's okay for us to, like I said, I'm still extending my hand out as a moment of truth, that we might see things different, but I think we should all still have that same common understanding of love. But we should all have the options and the opportunities to question, and more importantly, to all be able to live our soul lives and do what's right for the collective. But you can't do... There's no way for everybody to do everything for the collective with Uranus and Taurus. It's Uranus and Scorpio where that comes together. This is that we all have values, that more people now are poor and don't have money and stuff like that, and nobody talks about that stuff. We focus and hyper-focus on the smaller number on the screen. I'm not trying to belittle that number either, but it is a smaller number than the numbers that are happening of people that are more poor now. People that are more sick in other ways, people that are more mentally ill, and now more people that are losing the ability to even have food because of that small number. That's just fact. That's the astrology too, that if we're going to talk about Aquarius issues and humanitarian issues, we haven't even come close to talking about it yet. And to be honest with you, and this will probably trigger people, that the greatest humanitarian issue that we've got right now, and see, it's my destiny to say this, that the greatest humanitarian issue at this moment is whether or not you stay away from society completely and put something over your face, and that nobody can help. I have no problem putting something over my face if I got to go help. There's a lot of people who need mental health issues right now. There's a lot of people who need help with poverty. There's a lot of people who need help in a lot of different areas of life. But those aren't being talked about, and we're not allowed to even do anything about them. We're not even allowed to question them, and the mainstream media doesn't even cover any of it. And everybody keeps looking at the mainstream media. Well, I'm here to tell you that 2021 is not about the mainstream media. But those that do follow it fully and think that it's going to be your end-all, be-all are going to be very sad that everything they told you this year that was going to happen did not. And the stories have switched. And to finalize this, I would say that the biggest thing that I would say to be concerned of the astrology of 2021 would be, are you willing to let go of the reality that all of us, through 2012 to now, have been talking about this change of reality to be a better place for us all? Are you really gonna take that whole notion that, let me prove that I have taken this thing in my arm so I can go to a concert, so I can get on a plane? Are you really gonna follow that? Are you really going to create that for us by following it? I guess it's all your destiny to do that. I don't know. Because that's going to be the Aquarian thing is, if you study Saturn in Aquarius, you know, and especially with the square to Uranus, these are bad. These are experiments gone bad, especially when they come from science. Sure, it's a great time for science to learn that you can't manipulate Gaia, humans, and genetically alternate, or genetically alter it. However you want to look at it. That the people rise against when their sovereignty and their values are taken away from them of being a human. And also being blamed for the catastrophes of the planet without looking at other data that prove that we have nothing to do with a lot of it. We have nothing to do with more electric storms at this moment. There's so much data now. And that people think it's crazy to look there because what? The scientists that certain people put on the media don't say that's true? Or who are the fact checkers? So I'll still be here on my YouTube and on social media platforms. But like I said, I will just be giving you more of the basics. And this is my last address about these matters to people on public. As I will be talking about these matters on High Vibe. And my weekly astrology uncut in the way that it's always been, especially from the year 2014 through 2018 into 2019 when I changed it to deep astrology. Those that know it, those that have seen it, you can watch episodes of it. That's what you'll get every week. You'll also be getting Deep Love Tarot. You'll be getting other shows that, of course, that I'm working on and other astrology topics. But High Vibe is where my daily horoscope is. That's where I can be my most free. It's also where I can do deep astrology and show the charts and go into all the charts and be free to be able to express my true self. There's certain words I can't even use right now on YouTube. Mainstream media outlets that are even putting out their stuff on YouTube are bleeping out the words. And so the writing's on the wall. And I ask you deeply, as somebody who has a track record, and I know I'm a Leo, and some people think I have an ego, but the truth is that I'm just calling out truth. And to be honest with you, I got rid of a whole network with my own name on it and built a network about other people and built a network about inclusivity and built a way for all of us to come together to talk about this stuff and to look at these things differently and not make it about myself. But when it comes to being an astrologer, I have made the bold predictions for years ahead of time when nobody was talking about these things and called out the dates, and I have it all there, and you all know it's there. That I'm telling you what I'm discussed in this video is to what to pay attention to. And then it's not crazy to think. It's not a conspiracy. The conspiracy theory in general is actually been used by the government, by the CIA, to be used in a moment like this for people to think it actually is a conspiracy. The idea of conspiracy theories was purposely put out there for at moments when it wasn't a conspiracy to throw out that it's a conspiracy. That's how Saturn and Pluto work, and especially in Capricorn. And let's not forget that Mercury, the ruler of astrology, Mercury, the ruler of your brain, this has been a war for your mind with Pluto there, with Saturn there, and it's for control of your mind. And are you going to fall for that, or are you going to break the spell? Because the shattered reality is going to show things and make people realize either once they've gotten on the wrong side of the fence that was told to be the promised land and that was wonderful, that they were lied to. And it's too late at that point once you've entered the cage and it's closed behind you. You have to become crazy and break out. And this week, with us coming into the new year, we have Mercury coming back to that same position at 22 degrees Capricorn to meet where it did with the Sun, Saturn, and Pluto. In direct alignment, also with Ceres, exact. Not only from a 2D, 3D geo chart, but look up from a helio perspective. And with electricity being the main ruler of astrology through Aquarius, electromagnetic energy and earthquakes and earth changes are going to be our number one thing. And I'm making the bold prediction that as I had Anne on for New Year, or for, it was Christmas Eve, who's a history professor, and we were talking about the Black Plague in the Dark Ages and how they didn't know for so long that it was fleas that spread it. That we're in a similar situation now, dealing with electromagnetic and frequency, dealing with also things that come from space, and also things that target certain people and certain groups for some reason. That it's not as clear-cut as you might think. We're not nearly being revealed what's the truth. And to question that at this moment is divine. I appreciate you all, and with Mercury and Pluto meeting as well this week, coming into the new year with 4 lunations in Cancer. Remember, we had a full moon lunar eclipse on January 10th. We had the solar eclipse with Comet Neowise in Cancer. We need to follow our feelings. We need to restore our personal lives. We need to restore wholesomeness. We need to restore feeling in the most important way. And we need to restore the truth and allow that feeling to come back into our lives. We can't keep pushing that away. It's been stripped from us. A second new moon in Cancer that followed that, July 20th, and then a 4th lunation cycle of Cancer with another full moon in Cancer that we just had on December 29th. It's been emotional, it's been personal, but it's been a time for us to realize that it's time to make a different choice when it comes to if we're going to live and be free to feel, or if we are going to allow people in our own collective that psychologically, based off the astrology too, with these nodes squaring Neptune, there's psychological issues that people aren't seeing, and a lot of it has to do with authoritarianism, by fear that is projected by authoritarians that are hidden, that want to take power and have those people elect those people in. And I'm just trying to tell you that that's all not only in history repeating itself, but astrology repeating itself. And it's clear as day. And the idea of spirituality, I think, is going to change. Maybe it really is just freedom, is to be truly spiritual, to allow the spirit to be free of expression. Because to not express oneself in fixed energy is to not have anything at all. No sovereignty, no love, no heart, no passion, and no connection. And when something tries to come and eradicate that, because sure, there are forces that we don't know yet that are out there naturally, or from the sun, or from other dimensions, or just from whatever caused this event of this 2020 to cause havoc in a lot of people's lives. It's the choices that have been made of how to deal with it that have been a greater cost to all those things in our life than the thing itself. And if you don't agree with that and you don't see that, that's okay. But at the end of the day, just know that whenever you do come to my channel, and you do come to High Vibe, that we are a place that you can rely on talking about these things and giving you the astrology and questioning everything and using history and have history professors on staff and actually do the work and do the research and do the time and have alliances with astrologers and spiritual people that come from not trying to impress others because they said it, but are willing to speak and to say the things that others aren't, or they are afraid to. And to me, that is the highest vibe one can be. I appreciate you all. I thank you so much. And I hope that on this new year, you learn to love again, that you learn to enjoy your life, and to remember that you have a life, and that you have a lot more power than you realize. I'll talk to you all soon, and see you on the other side.